All right, welcome. Thank you to everyone who is streaming this, and for those of you who watch this afterwards, I appreciate. So excited today. Typically we've used these all staffs as an opportunity to really talk about the agency priorities. It's been an opportunity to discuss the work we are doing in Medicaid to reform the aging system so that folks can age in their home and community. It's given us an opportunity to talk about our mental health reforms and building out a crisis response system capable of both preventing and responding to crisis, and about our childcare reforms on ways that we're making childcare more accessible and more affordable. But today we really wanted to focus on a specific division that does work that really in many ways encompasses and crosses over all of the work that we do in the agency and all of our divisions, and that's Indiana 211. So really want to thank Tara and Kevin today. So I'm going to start with an introduction here. This is Tara Morse. Tara Morse is our executive director of Indiana 211, and she is the first executive director of FSSA's Indiana 211. So she came in with the program back in the end of 2019, beginning of 2020. Nothing was going on in Indiana in the beginning of 2020. And so 211 had a really easy transition. They just had to come in and do the same. Well, of course, I'm not being serious with the COVID pandemic. 211 really as a state became an integral part of how we responded to the COVID-19 pandemic, both being the single place that you could call or go to get scheduled for a test, a vaccine, callbacks, any information related to COVID-19. And so really, despite this enormous amount of work and over 1 million calls that they received, they continued to do really the base function and operations of Indiana 211. And so that's what we're going to really spend a little bit of time today talking about. So Tara, for those who I think may not fully understand or know 211, tell everyone what 211 is and what you all do.
There we go. Sorry. Okay, so first of all, thank you, Dan. And 211 has been around for 20 some years, but as we moved into the agency, we're just thankful. It was a very warm welcome, a very busy welcome when we started with the agency in 2020 during the pandemic and transitioning a whole staff, which hadn't been done before. So we are so fortunate to be part of this organization because the supports that we've received have allowed us to grow. So what is Indiana 211? So 211 is a free service available to anyone in the state of Indiana to call, text, or email or search online to connect to resources. So when we say resources, we're really talking about those supports and things that you need to live a healthy, viable life. And so oftentimes that could be education, employment, food, housing, all kinds of different resources. So as you can imagine, that is a task to cover the entire state. So it's not just focused on one part of the state, it is all of Indiana. So we have a resource database and we strive to be the source of truth for resources in Indiana. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but I real quickly want to introduce Kevin. He's going to talk a lot more, but Kevin Evans was introduced to the team in late 2023. And Kevin has just done some amazing things to continue moving things forward for 211. And we'll talk about that. He's going to get a chance to talk about all the great stuff that he's done. But I wanted to introduce him first. So what we do is really just connect people to resources. So a lot of times people really don't know where to start. So they can call 211 and we can start right by just asking them some questions and kind of figuring out, you know,
provided across the state. So you could have an agency providing multiple services at multiple locations. And that's what our resource curation team is tracking as they're typing and putting in the information and worrying about if a period or a comma or whatever needs to be in the sentence. So they do a really good job of that. And we do serve all 92 counties in the state of Indiana. And if you look at our resources, we have resources in all 92 counties across the state of Indiana. And it's maintained and updated by that resource curation team. We have 6 full-time resource curators who are trained on a specific style of how they have to put the resources in the database to make sure they're consistent and they look the same, at least from a syntax standpoint. And then we do have a new community engagement team, and their role isn't necessarily just to go sit at a booth or do a presentation, but to create additional resources across the state of Indiana based on the unmet needs data that we collect at Indiana 211. So when we have a referral at Indiana 211, some of those could be a client refused a referral, or we may not have a service available. And our community engagement team plays a pivotal role in identifying what those unmet needs are in communities all across the state to create additional resources. And an example of that is our community engagement team held a community conversation in Fort Wayne with about 100 stakeholders, presented their community data to them, and then had a conversation about where their gaps were, which led to additional creation of services, which then get included in our database. So it's been a very pivotal team.
Yeah, it's rare, I think, in government to have an organization that is got a 30,000-foot view, right? In business vernacular, on all of the kind of programs and resources, but then also a 3-foot view every time somebody calls the phone. So with all of those resources and tracking all those resources, how do you all assure that they're accurate and up to date? Because I would imagine, as you've talked about, you've got some that are being created, some that are actually closing. I have to imagine that is not an easy feat.
So our resource curators contact all of the agencies once a year. So I was a teacher, a special education teacher as a background, and I had my caseload, if you will, of students that were on my caseload. And I would have to hold annual meetings for those students at the time that their meeting was held the year previous. That's the easiest way to explain how our resource curators are splitting up the resources, is that they have their own caseload of agencies. And then based on their caseload of agencies, they're updating them as soon as that due date hits every year. Or the agency has the opportunity to contact through our solicitation system to be able to update their agency through our portal and our system.
Yeah, I think that's important. So you all are not just a passive part of a state agency with a call center. You're out in the communities, you're intersecting with the communities. Because if you think about a community organization, you're, a small, nonprofit food bank in a small, town in Indiana. One is you want people to know about your resource in the area. And so knowing that 211 is going to be a referral source for them, one, creates increased awareness about their program. And so you guys have done a phenomenal job of getting buy-in from all those community partners who then call you or reach out to you to let you know they're adding a site or they're changing their hours so that the information that you're sharing is accurate as well. You mentioned a little bit about how people can access 211. They can call, I think you said they can email, they can text, they can search through the web. Tell us a little bit more about how all those different modalities improve access and in many ways improve connection of folks to the resources.
So just in since January to September, we've done roughly 497,000 referrals to the organizations that I mentioned are in our database. And those have been done through phone calls to Indiana 211 because we don't necessarily track our texting in our dashboard yet. And so we wanted to make sure that when individuals are getting a hold of 211, we have multiple ways for them to access our resources. And so we created a guided search on our website, and we wanted to make sure that everything was as accessible as just calling 211. So if you access anything, all you have to do is put into your web bar in211.org, and you'll get connected to the guided search. That'll be the very first thing that pops up on our website. It's brand new. There's a lot of enhancements coming to it, like a language feature so that people can access our guided search in different languages and things like that. But this allows them to access direct resource data of Indiana 211, every resource we have. And as we've traveled this state, doing presentations, talking to social workers, people who work in hospitals, counselors, the feedback that we've really gotten is, how can we easily access the data without calling and taking up a phone line space? You know, we know how to search for resources. Can you create something for us to do that? And so we did that, and they can go in there and put in a keyword or an agency name. They can put in a specific topic like dental care, and it'll pull up the resources, or a zip code to pull up resources. And so it allows for an easy way to access 211 beyond just texting or a phone call, allowing individuals to use their computer or their phone in different ways to access that.
And I think to further that, like, our goal is to continue evolving with the world. A lot of state, I know that's a radical thought for a state agency, but we are continuously looking at, what do people need? We know that different generations are going to access services differently. So for some people, a phone call is the only way they're going to actually talk. You know, they would need to talk to someone. For some people, they don't want to talk to someone, but we still need to make sure that our resources are available and that's searchable, and that they can get the same results. So that's a continuous goal of looking at AI. You know, what is AI? It's everything. It's everywhere all the time. But how do we leverage that to actually get people what they need as the world is evolving into something more than what maybe we're doing today?
And you also announced a recent launch of a community calendar. So can you talk a little bit about how that complements the resource database?
So again, we wanted to make sure we had the guided search and the tools that people can call in and get a navigator directly on the phone. One of the things that I discovered in talking with our navigator team is that they had a channel on Teams where they would post community events that were being held across the state. And in looking at that, it was very tough to filter through what county something was in, or where it was located, or, you know, it was today. And so we developed a community calendar that allows our resource curators and our community engagement team and other members on our staff who find community events to be able to post them directly to this calendar, and then filter it by the type of event. So it may be a haircutting event or an immunization clinic. It may be a health fair. But our navigators have also discovered that potentially today I don't have like a food pantry that may be available to you, or a soup kitchen, but I do have this event over here that has food available. So it's just a way to supplement our resource database as well. And, you know, we have just started this in August, and we've posted almost 300 and some events across the state, which is really, really awesome. And I got to give kudos to our resource curation team, our community engagement team, as well as the navigators team, because they're identifying these events. And our resource curator team and community engagement team, I came up with this thing called hunting, and they were worried about what that was initially, but it's just finding community events. So they have a dedicated time to do that.
So one of the reasons I think 211 is so important as a resource is because across our agencies, in every one of our divisions, we've got folks who are they're gonna have team members who interact with folks who need resources, right? And they're coming in to apply for SNAP, or maybe they're doing vocational rehab, or they're somebody who's receiving services through First Steps or through childcare. Regardless of the program they're in, they are often coming to us for resources. And so I think for everyone in the agency to have an awareness of what 211 is, because the most difficult conversation to have with somebody is when they say, and do you know if there are a place where there is food available? The most difficult thing to say is no, because it's so much better if we can say, I don't, but I know who does. Let me get you, either you can use the phone right here, or let me give you a number 211 to call. And you know then in that intersection that even though we may have not had the information readily available, we connected them to folks who do. So I think it's really important, regardless of where we work in the agency, to have this awareness of 211 and the myriad of services that you provide. So for folks who are interested, how can fellow FSSA employees learn more about Indiana 211?
I'm going to play a little bit on what you just said before I answer that question, because our community engagement team, as well as Morgan Price, our resource curation lead, meets with community agencies and state agencies all across the spectrum. And in doing that, we have partnered with Department of Workforce Development pretty closely, where we identify in our question asking through our navigators that individuals haven't finished high school, or maybe they haven't finished junior high. Through our partnership with Department of Workforce Development, we can make direct referrals for adult education now. That's brand new and something that we just started within the last 3 months, but we've had well over 300 referrals for adult education from that, getting the consent to share their information. And also partnered with Department of Workforce Development on a job placement. We have a direct link that when we notice somebody needs job placement, maybe we can't provide them with a service today, but we can get them a job or the training that they need. We partnered with Department of Workforce Development to make a direct referral to, all we do is the navigator sends an email to one individual, and that individual gets them connected to their Work One Center to be able to get them what they need in job placement or certification. So that's some of the stuff we've done recently that has really increased the access for individuals to better themselves and better their lives. When it comes to getting connected with 211, I would say you could go to in211.org and find most of the information that you want there. We have a tab labeled community agencies that includes, I didn't touch on this, but our inclusion criteria. That's how we determine what we put on our community calendar, or maybe what agencies belong based on our prescriptive nature of looking at agencies. The inclusion criteria is what we base all of that on. So that can be found there. You can find Indiana 211 University information on there. That's something we didn't touch on either, but that's a new program that we started where we host a monthly webinar where there's a topic. And so September, we just held it today, was suicide prevention. DMHA presented on that. We pull in speakers, and October's is domestic violence awareness. November's is going to be a service member veterans theme. But if you know social workers that need, or counselors, or anybody that needs continuing education credits, that does count for their continuing education credits. And so that's been a huge thing for us, is Indiana 211 University. And you can find the first two videos. One was resource curation and our call center operations. So you can watch that video to get that information. And then we did one on community engagement as well. So you can access that, or you can reach out to our community engagement team, or Tara, myself, or whoever, and we'll get you whatever you want.
Real quick, I was just, to your point, when you mentioned, it's really important for us, and we appreciate, again, this opportunity to share with all of FSSA employees, because maybe you've heard about 211, but didn't realize in your daily work and interacting with people that it could be a great resource to add to. We know that a lot of programs are specific to a need, but a lot of times people who have that need also have other needs. And so there is a place that you can refer people to. We know in the healthcare environment, they're asking a lot of these social determinants of health questions, but they're not necessarily connected to a directory of resources. So if I just asked you if you have food, maybe you've just got a recent diagnosis where you have to have a special type of food, and they ask the question, but they don't necessarily always have an answer. So, in building the awareness, it's helpful for the more people that know and understand how robust we are and how we're working with other state agencies. And for example, we didn't mention disaster. We are a significant part of the disaster response in Indiana. So we partner with the Indiana Department of Homeland Security. So when a local emergency management organization realizes this is bigger than maybe what they can handle, or they need federal help, they will contact IDHS, and then they contact us immediately, and we'll set up a disaster forum where we can take reports for people who have excessive damage to their homes, or they need some type of analysis from FEMA. So that is an ongoing thing. And we post those to our website as soon. So again, it's in211.org. That's all anyone ever has to know. And you can, it tells you our phone number if you can't remember it, but it really gets people connected to whatever you need as far as resources. So, we just want to keep pushing that. So we really appreciate anybody who's watching.
And with the disaster resources, we also do seasonal resources. So like back to school, Thanksgiving, Christmas, winter coats is coming up. Our community engagement team and our resource curation team actively look for those. And so there's a seasonal button on our guided search that you can find those resources under. And then additionally, with the disaster, one of the new processes we came up with in the last year was anytime we're activated for the storm damage reports, we get additional questions about where do I find drinking water? Where do I find shelter today? So as soon as that disaster is activated and Jamie and Tara let us know on the resource curation side, I activate the community engagement team and our resource curation team, and then they actively contact the local EMAs, COADs, or whoever exists to be able to get those resources. And then there is a disaster button now on our guided search to find those specific resources as well.
Yeah, one of the other things that's been super helpful as an agency is we brought in 988 as well, is that the interconnectivity between 211 and 988 is seamless. They're on the same system. They talk to one another constantly, so that if somebody calls 988 and after their crisis is addressed, if it turns out that they have a food or a housing or another resource, they can just seamlessly connect to 211 and vice versa. If somebody's calling 211 for a housing resource and really what they need are mental health resources, we can seamlessly connect back. One thing I did want to ask, this was a question from the audience, Tara. Is it true that your name used to be Susie and you changed it when you became the 211 director, Tara, so everyone would call you 211 Tara?
That is in fact false. 211 Tara just seems easier to remember than my last name. So anyway, but there's one other thing I think that has been great, that because we are not necessarily direct services, we've had so many opportunities to partner with some of the universities around. In fact, we've got some pretty well-known national universities that have contacted us to do some work with us because our resource data is publicly available. And so there's a lot of really great things. So we've partnered with 2 universities and we're in the process of getting ready to release an app. We always get a request, do you have a list of resources? Can we just print something? Well, I mean, for those of you that have been around for a while, there was a rainbow book that's pretty much what it was. But as we all know, it's outdated as soon as it's printed. So we've created this application that, or actually these students have created this application that can take this data and, based on your county and the type of needs that you're looking for, we can make that printed resource available to people. So that's like a really exciting, like I said, we are really continuing to try to figure out how do we meet people where they are, and it's lots of different ways.
Yeah, and one thing probably important to know is like, when we brought 211 into state government, right, how many other states had done that before us? What number were we on that list?
Really, to be fully state-funded, state-run, statewide, we were the first.
That's right. So we were the first. Loaded question. So we were the first to do this, and really as proof to the innovations that you all continually do, this really was for us in state government also an innovation to make it a single number that you could call to really have somebody help coordinate or help connect you to any resource, local or statewide. So just huge kudos to you and your team really for not only moving into state government, but for embracing it and continually innovating. I think one of the things that's always important as we talk with folks is a little bit of understanding the why behind the work that they do. I think for all of us, I think that's the thing that gets us up in the morning, kind of keeps us motivated at times when there's challenges. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your why related to this work.
Sure. I do have, if you don't mind indulging us and sharing a couple of our team members, why. I think it's really important because it is different views. For me personally, the why is I've been with FSSA in some form or fashion for 33 years. And so it's just home. It feels right. There's always people to serve in so many different capacities. I've worked on lots of different things, started out as a DFR caseworker. It wasn't DFR at the time, but there's just always a need. And so it's just my passion. As you can tell, I'm talking faster and faster because I really get excited about this work. I love what 211 does. I love what it stands for. And the fact that we're part of this agency is it's just ideal. So real quick, I'm just going to share a couple. And we haven't mentioned Jamie Farron. She's the third pillar here between Kevin and I. She's our deputy director. She's been with 211 prior to its transition to FSSA. Absolutely instrumental. She runs the operations. She knows the people, the data inside and out. So kudos to Jamie Farron as well. We haven't mentioned her, but she has been a critical piece of this whole process. So from our team lead, Nick Thompson, the impact we at 211 have on Hoosiers' lives is why I do what I do every day. Whether you're hearing it in a call with someone we were able to connect to vital resources, or seeing it in the way our team comes together in times of need, be it severe weather or disasters our communities face, I'm often reminded of how important our work is. I feel fulfilled and confident in the service we provide and the ways in which we matter to the callers across the entire state. So that's somebody who has the view as a team lead. He supervises our community navigators. This one is from a member of our team, and it's a very personal story. Years ago, my abusive husband had isolated me from my entire support system. I had no one to call for help. I'm sorry. It's very personal for this person. When he locked me out of the house in my pajamas and bare feet in the middle of winter, I called several agencies, but none were able to help with my situation. Thankfully, one of them told me to call 211, and I did that, and it changed my life. I value every day I get to come to work to help people to change the lives of others. So, I mean, that's a very powerful statement. And like I said, we have staff members who have lived experience, and that's what makes this so special. And then finally, from one of our team leads, Jasmine Turrentine, I always knew that I wanted to help people and make a positive difference in people's lives. Working at Indiana 211 really allows me to make that positive difference in our residents' lives. I can understand a caller's need to find the best fitting resources available to them. I can advocate for those who need the extra help to bridge the gap in receiving services. I remember during my orientation week, one of my first calls was a man needing food pantries. A few days later, he called back to let me know he was able to receive food, and it was due to my help. That feeling of knowing your help assisted someone with receiving a vital necessity in their life is indescribable. That feeling has led me to 4 years at 211. And then I'm going to pass it over to Kevin, who's going to share his personal why.
So growing up, grew up in poverty. That's how I grew up. My parents moved from place to place. Middle school, never elementary school, middle school, high school. Shifted around school to school. Always was in a different place. Would live with my grandparents or would live with my aunt, and then back to my parents when they weren't splitting up and getting back together. Domestic violence, tons of trauma, and made the decision that I was going to try to change some of that. And so that is what I tried to do for myself and for my kids to have a different outcome in their life, but then also tried to be in the social service sector where I could help individuals see that their generational issues or things that they're going through can be changed through getting the help that they need or finding someone who can be that listening ear to help them through that. And Indiana 211 is a great place for that through community navigators, but also the why of finding those community organizations to make sure we meet individuals' needs where they have them, or if we don't have them, how do we get them? So that's my why.
Thank you both, and thank you for bringing the stories from your team as well. Incredibly powerful. And also, I will just ask to all of you who are listening, it is also an opportunity for you all to help us spread awareness of 211, what they do, the resources they provide. Think about it as you interact with folks in the agency or in your community when anyone is in need. The answer sometimes is as easy as
Calling 211.
there you go. So lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it is SEC season again. So thank you, Tyson, who's always our captain of the ship on this one. So we are a little less than a week already since we launched. We've already raised $145,000. So I'm guessing, thank you all the people who didn't know that you had checked the box last year and you're doing it. So that's awesome. No, in all sincerity, that's a great way to do it, and we greatly appreciate it. So we are going to set our goal higher than last year. Last year, I think we was roughly 170,000. And this year's gone 180,000. And if you're saying, weren't you going to eat something terrible? We were, we still are. We were supposed to record it last week, but apparently the item we were going to eat was so terrible that the country outlawed it. And so now they're scrambling to get something equally as terrible for us to have to eat. We don't know what it is, and we're fine that it had to be delayed. It can keep being delayed. So keep watch on the hub. There'll be postings there about how you can donate to your favorite charity. The great thing here, I will say selfishly, is you can make a donation and you're not going to get a bunch of mail afterwards and a bunch of texts and emails afterwards. So it's a great way to contribute. And also we'll have postings about FSA Spirit Week in October. And so lastly, again, thank you, Tara. Thank you, Kevin, for all the work that you do. Thank you for all of you who tuned in today, and have a great rest of your day.